you have the ability to have sovereignty over your own safety and security. You have the ability to have property and to create financial freedom for yourself. A person who does that and addresses these other values, they're healthy. They have a strong community of people who they love and trust and who trust them. And then they have, a job and a role that they play in society that brings value to the community as a whole and the world around them. That is someone who is hard to be tyrannical to. That is someone who can resist tyranny. That is someone who can stand up for what is right. And that is someone who is not easy to control. And it's basically the opposite of whatever powers that be you want to think of want you to become. And that is what we have to do. We have to use our agency to march forward and do certain things for ourselves, okay? And the reason is because if we are helpless, then we are destined to fall into tyranny via these populist movements, which are going to be either fascist or extremely socialist, right? And so either way, we become dependent more on the state and we become less dependent on ourselves. And basically then we're experiencing true tyranny and the inability to really have freedom and depend on ourselves for our own destiny, okay? So let's get into what we actually should do. And there's 5 categories that I see as the core values and the core tenets, let's say, that we need to be pushing for in our lives. And these are my values, okay? These are the things that when I think of my dream and my goals, these are just the categories that basically round out what I see as a complete life. And it just so happens that if you're doing well in these categories in your own way, you are a part of the solution to build a strong nation and to build just a good community and a good life for yourself as well. And so this is, I think, how we must act in the face of the darkness that our generation is up against. And again, I'm not trying to downplay those challenges and be some hyper optimist here. I get that it's really challenging, and believe me, I feel it too. I really do. But this is where I think we should focus our energy, okay? So here's the 5 values, okay? Domain is the first one. That encapsulates all of your property, your finances, your kind of worldly responsibilities, right? You've got an apartment, or maybe you have a house, you've got a car, you've got, clothing, all this stuff. It all kind of is this big bucket to capture basically your domain. It's your property, okay? And finances is a core piece of that. It's the energy of that value is your finances. And that's really what this channel is all about. But you have got to spend less than you make and start to get a hold of assets. You need to invest in assets that are going to grow over time in this environment, okay? Because the money printing is not going to stop, and asset holders will disproportionately be benefited from that. So the biggest thing about the domain is earning that income, spending as little of it as you can, and getting yourself some assets, okay? And the big thing on this channel is index investing. I think that is the core bread and butter. And if you want to free yourself from eternal helplessness, we have to focus on that. Okay, so the domain is very, very important. And this is going to be a fairly philosophical video, let's say, because this is something I'm still working towards. And this is something that in my heart feels like a good place to funnel my energy into these 4 categories as I guide myself in life. So it's going to get a little theoretical and philosophical, but again, it's addressing our problems that we face, I do believe. So the domain is you have, the goal there is financial freedom. Eventually, the goal is to get enough assets that basically you are no longer a slave to the system. You can actually live off the growth of your assets. And that's probably one of the most important goals of the domain, I would say. And again, that's like your property, okay, that value. And, it'd be great if you owned some land too. I mean, imagine that. like how do we save ourselves from helplessness? Well, if you create a portfolio that can pay for your life and your family's life, that's really great. What if you also had some land that you could potentially, like, hey, like, I can be a part of some sort of local agriculture. Like, this is another way to free ourselves from helplessness, and it's one of my dreams. I mean, I don't own any land currently, but it would be great. And I can see that if in the face of helplessness, like, if you can get property, that is a huge leg up, because basically you now have your physical domain that you can claim some sort of sovereignty over and have some control over what you do there. Like, you can choose how you build your home, you can choose how you do your garden, and XYZ, like where you drill your well, like this sort of thing. And it might not have to be like something out in the countryside. For you, it might be getting an apartment one day, just because once you have an apartment, you're no longer like beholden to the landlord, right? So that's just this idea of like, we have some sovereignty over our property and our financial freedom, okay? That's the first value there. So I'll bookmark that as the like little intro into the domain as a value, okay? The second one, guys, is yourself. And I would call that health, essentially. What are you eating? What are you doing to exercise? Are you sleeping? How stressed are you? Are you facing health consequences because of that stress? This is and also, are you being basically castrated by the chemicals in our society? I mean, you can see the charts about male testosterone and what's happening there. It's plummeting, if you didn't know. So it's been plummeting for decades. So that's the second value, is the I, the health. That's me. That's I. That's yourself. Okay. It's an important one, because talking about saving yourself from helplessness, there's nothing much more helpless than being sick and being dependent on, medication, or dependent on doctors to, live. And we all go through health struggles at some point. We all get sick sometimes. But the important part about this value is be strong, be healthy. Are you taking care of yourself? Okay? And I'm going to leave it at that for now. So we've covered domain, that's your property. We've covered I, that's your health. Okay, that's yourself. Now, this is one where Gen Z is really struggling, is the next value. It's we. Okay? That's your community. Who are your people? Okay? And believe me, I know this one hurts for a lot of us. Like, I think this is a big one. It is a huge one, okay? But you have to strive to put energy into this. You have to. You have to build community. We have to build families. And I'm preaching to the choir here. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and you guys have heard this, but pour energy into it. Fight for it. Don't give up. You need to find your people. You need friends who you can trust, who you love. You need to find your, well, be good to the family you have. Don't burn bridges. Try and mend those relationships if you can, because family and community and friends, that's what this value is all about. It's your people. And this is what life is really all about. This is what it's all for, is your people and your friends, and the people you get to walk through life with. It's these experiences that matter. And so that's the third value, I would say, is your community. And we want to build families. Like, believe me, I know this is a big struggle, because Gen Z is really struggling to find their partners and find their husbands and wives. And it's just like, okay, this is something worth fighting for. It's very, very important to us, okay? Because when we are isolated, okay, going back to the original problem, when we are isolated, we are helpless. And there is this helplessness that comes with being alone. And believe me, I've actually spent some lonely years in my life, okay? And it's not the strongest place to be. And so I know a lot of Gen Z are struggling with that, but try and pour some energy into your community. Try and find a great woman to eventually marry. and it's worth it. I really believe it'll be worth it for us, because community is a huge source of strength in the times of struggle. You don't have to do it alone. Find people. Go find someone. Find someone to hang out with. Find someone to do things with. Build a community, okay? Easier said than done, but it's something we must do. And of course, build your family, okay? That's like the core of the community there. So that's the third value. And I think you guys can see how these first three values, if you address them, you're pulling yourself out of helplessness, okay? Okay. So here's the next one. This is a big one. This is your career. Okay, this is what you do for society. This is the value you bring to the world. You, in your own humble way, you have to find something valuable to do for society. And that's what your job is. That's a job. Don't get it confused. That's what a job is. You're doing something valuable for someone. And that's what a job is. That's what a career is. So this is a huge one. And if you're lucky enough to have a good job right now, pour effort into that. If you've got learning opportunities, give your energy to that. Become valuable to society. Be, valuable to the whole. This is the fourth value there, okay? This is how you address the world and how you become valuable, okay, to the broader world. And this is, and of course, how you make money. And yeah, that's hugely important. I know this is kind of like Captain Obvious, but you need a good job. You need to contribute something. And in return, you're going to get paid. And that gives you some energy. That gives you some leverage to work with. And that's what this channel is really all about, what we do with that, investing your margin to create financial freedom, which loops back to the first value, which is our domain, our property. Okay. And then finally, this is one that is a more spiritual value. This is the spiritual value. This is God. Okay. We should strive to turn to God, and we should try to live a righteous life. And this is kind of the crown on the set of values here, the fifth value. So find your God and turn to them for guidance and seek to live a righteous life in your God's eyes. That's the fifth value, okay? And those are the five values. Those are the five values that if we pour our energy into, we are climbing out of helplessness into sovereignty, freedom, and capability. And I believe it is, of course, easier said than done. And I'm not trying to downplay the challenges that we face as a generation, but we have to pour our energy into something. And there are so many other ways to waste your energy, and we all know what they are. This is what we need to focus on. These are the things that build a complete life, and they address the original problem of basically a helpless generation who's hopeless and helpless. And look at this, guys. If you are someone with financial freedom and property, and you have sovereignty over your own security, this is a very uniquely American thing, and I know it's polarizing for Americans, but believe it or not, as an American, it is your right to security. You have the right to secure your property with the Second Amendment. You can bear arms. I don't know if you knew that, but you can. And of course, you follow your state laws and everything like that, but in every state, you have this right. And so I don't think it's crazy at all to tie that into your domain as like a part of that value. Is you have the ability to have sovereignty over your own safety and security. You have the ability to have property and to create financial freedom for yourself. A person who does that and addresses these other values, they're healthy. They have a strong community of people who they love and trust and who trust them. And then they have, a job and a role that they play in society that brings value to the community as a whole and the world around them. That is someone who is hard to be tyrannical to. That is someone who can resist tyranny. That is someone who can stand up for what is right. And that is someone who is not easy to control. And it's basically the opposite of whatever powers that be you want to think of want you to become. And that is what we have to do. Like, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because it's not. And I'm not even saying all of us will get there, but that is the person we need to be. Those are the men we need to strive to become. Because that is the opposite of helplessness. I think if you address these values in your own way, and you as your own man customize this to your own path and do what you do in your own way, we will be striving in the right direction. So there I go. Huge topic, covering a lot of bases there. And I know I'm painting with broad strokes. These are complicated topics, but there we go. That's an intro to this. A solution to helplessness.